Alex, thank you so much for taking your time. I know it's it's an interesting moment for everybody, and beyond the kind of the physical drain that it takes to run a business in this environment, there's a mental toll that accompanies it. So appreciate your willingness to participate and the time to participate.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with just giving an introduction of yourself and a bit of context to what you're all about.
Yeah. On myself in general or what I do in business.
Let's
Does
go
it
with the
matter?
business side. Yeah, let's go with the business side. I know we could
Okay.
take the
I'm like,
self
what
part
I
might
like,
take a little longer.
before quarantine, I used to like being outside and going to parties and concerts. No. Um,
Yeah.
I'm Alex Batdorf. I'm the founder and CEO of Get Shit Done. And what actually led me here is I'm a three-time entrepreneur. So this is my third business now. I've been building businesses since I was 19. So my first one was in undergrad at University of Chicago. Um, I've raised capital from venture capitalists and angels. I've bootstrapped businesses. And the really interesting thing about the work I'm doing now, I think of this as my legacy company because of those collection of experiences that made me so passionate about improving outcomes for female entrepreneurs. So Get You Done is really about increasing the pipeline of female founders scaling $1 million and up companies. And it's important because, to me at least, because only 1.7% of us have done it. And a theme in my life that I've found of just importance of any of my businesses I built have been generational wealth and access. What does that actually, how does that impact not only myself, but my family, but also our communities at large? And so in the work that I do now, it was from when I was scaling businesses, the further and further up the scaling chain we got, the less and less women I saw, and especially people of color. So it was like a double whammy. And when I heard these conversations around, it's so hard to be a female entrepreneur and so on and so forth, there wasn't really any tangible, practical things telling us, well, what's next? What now? It was just talking about how hard it is. I'm like, we get it. We know. So it was looking at, well, what are we being told today and what's actually missing? And the thing that typically founders are being told is like, go get an investor. So you have the Shark Tanks of the world, which give me a little heartburn, even watching them, because at the end of the day, the majority of companies, it's like well under 1% will get access to institutional capital because it's not the right vehicle for most businesses. And now you're telling 99% of you, like more than 99% of you, go F off. Like, good luck if you want to build a scalable, a bigger business beyond maybe a mom and pop shop. With nothing's wrong with those. But what I found was that there's all these women saying, I want to have options for how I do it, but I don't really know where to start. So they're kind of going towards what they're being told. So I spent thousands of hours talking to, at this point, hundreds of women about what are your scaling challenges, and let's take capital off the table, because typically founders think that's the problem, and 9 out of 10 times they're wrong. Usually the problem is that they don't have traction. And what does traction mean? That means revenue, it means users, it means developing a piece of technology, understanding there are, capital intensive companies. But for the most part, if you want to get any type of momentum in your business, if that's an investor check or a potential collaboration partnership, you have to have done some of the work yourself. No one owes you a check. No one owes you anything. So what do you do to actually get those bare bones down? So that's what Get You Done focuses on. It's taking women who have already created something, but now they're like, I'm stuck. I want to make this pretty big. I want to scale it, but I don't really have the resources, the blueprints, the connections to make it happen. But I have a big vision for this, and I know we can take it there, but I just really don't know how to. So that's what Get You Done is about, and what I spend all my time doing, just from my own collection of experiences. And I'm the type of person, like, I'm such a little justice warrior. And when I see systems are broken, I'm just like, fuck this, like, we're gonna burn it down, like, it's time to go. But also I become obsessive because I'm a systems thinker. So I'm always thinking about, let's not just talk about it. What are we gonna do and at this point, it's not even about fixing a system, it's about creating a new one, because the current one's just too broken.
You know, it's amazing to me, just to double down and paint a little bit of a picture for folks that are listening.
Mm-hmm.
We had met, I think, let's say for argument's sake, either July or August over at your Dumbo House, and
Yeah.
you had just told me about the early stages or kind of like the planning stages of the first cohort. So I guess for a little bit more clarity, Get Shit Done is an accelerator. It's for
Part of what we do. Yep.
yeah. So part of it is a female-led kind of accelerator, which is fully digital. So everything taking place online. I had the privilege and honor to be part of the first cohort's kind of mentor program. And when you were talking about it, of course, it's a big goal, right? It's a lofty initiative, and I have a lot of those conversations. So do you, right? With a lot
Yeah.
of people. 2 months later, it was off the ground, right? And not only is it off the ground, I mean the communication style, I guess the level of execution is what I'm getting at. Was really top notch. So kudos to you. I've been watching it since of course you had presented the idea to me
Mhm.
pre-launch, and I think now you are how far into it now? You did 2 or 3 full cohorts?
We're going into our third cohort
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yep.
You just did the demo day for the second one during COVID, in fact.
Yep. During COVID. Yep.
So how, I mean, it's a digitally run accelerator, and then of course mentorship and training and education around it. How has the business been impacted as a result of COVID?
It's been impacted positively.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before COVID, I already this was already a digital thing. So
Mhm.
we were virtual, and everything for me goes back to access. It's how do you curate it and then how you scale it. Because that's typically the issue, is that not having access to the right things so you can actually get things done in your company. So something that you touched on, you're like, you talked to me 2 months before we actually launched, and you're like, you did it that quickly, and then the execution, it's that a lot of founders can do that, but they don't know how to. This is my third go round, so it was like, we're just not teaching this stuff. People can do this. Like, how do you make sure it happens? So we went digital first, because when I looked at access, there are so many amazing programs out there and things out there trying to I always said the intentions are great, but the issue is you have to take kind of a step back and look at the system, right? The system creates a lot of barriers when we are unconsciously living within them. So there are programs that are, before COVID at least, now they had to move digital. They required people getting up, like accelerator programs, getting up and moving to another city to be in a program.
Mhm.
And that's hard, because if you are, let's say, our average founder that comes through Get Shit Done is on average 35, 34, 35. And half of our people are moms, they're married. And to be able to say, come here for 3 months to New York, to Silicon Valley, for 3 months, uproot your life to show us how serious you are about your business. And they're like, that doesn't mean you're more serious. It just means you have grown people shit.
Yeah.
Like, that is a privilege to be able to uproot your life to be able to go somewhere. It has nothing to do about how serious and how successful you want to be. And so by removing that barrier initially, we're like, it doesn't really matter about if they're here. It's about how do we make sure that they get access to the blueprints, the connections, and also the teachings we provide them. And the big thing that we first were concerned about is, by being virtual, would it eliminate the intimacy that you get in person? And it actually didn't. We have a hyper engaged community of founders that are constantly, even after they go through the program, they're in Slack, like they're blowing up Slack right now, like all pivoting their businesses to adapt to what's going on in COVID, all like crushing it right now. And so that didn't actually mean anything. But what it did open up by being digital first was that we had founders from all across, not even the country, the world.
Mhm.
We had like a founder in this last cohort was in Dubai. She woke up at 4 a.m. every day just to be in the accelerator, and she's killer. These are women that are in South Carolina, they're in New York, they're in Texas, they're in California. We were able to not only diversify it on geography, but also age. I would say on average, we're 34, 35. But I mean, I'd say the oldest person we had in this cohort was almost 60. And one of the most bonkers freaking founders I've ever met in my life. And then beyond that, it's also race. So we are super diverse across the board. And we're also intentional about it because we track POC along the way. Because when you get stuck in your silos, it's really easy to perpetuate a certain look, a certain type of company, a certain type of founder. And so by being digital first and being intentional about all of these things, initially it allowed our business to be set up in a way where, one, we're constantly serving our founders where they need to be served and at the place they are. And then two, it helped us to have that diversification from the get-go.
Yeah. I mean, so you're seeing an uptick. I mean, what does that really mean in terms of like a positive effect when it comes to COVID? Like, of course, I mean, you were already set up for this. And on one side, from what I heard, is that the post community engagement was already there and conditioned in the sense that everyone was already communicating in this manner. So
Yep.
it only continued in that manner. But
Yeah.
in terms of like the business side, the revenue side and things like that, has that also been kind of like business as usual?
Yeah. And now it's given us, so why it's an uptick is a couple things. So the first is, since we're so traction oriented, we're serving founders. And so they need to produce outcomes in their businesses, and everyone's shook right now. There's
Mhm.
communities that are doing so much to make sure we're being fostered and our needs are being met. But I think what there's a lack of right now is saying, if you have a business, what's next? And how do you navigate? Of course, it's making sure that you're looking at, what are the bad outcomes, but you still need to keep growing, or at least keeping it, at least maintaining in some way in this environment. So that's what we focus on in general from the get-go, is that we've always been traction focused. So for us, there's even more of a hunger to say, I was completely offline. What the fuck do I do now? And so now it's helping them kind of put in those frameworks and understand, how do I reposition myself? And then where do I go from here? And the second thing is, it's allowed myself and my team to take a step back and say, things we were going to roll out later, are taking a front seat now, because we also have to pivot and adapt to what's happening. Because so we were going to do offline events. Now it's like, nope, we're going to actually stay online. And what did that actually produce? We were able to turn around an online conference within 48 hours.
Yeah.
That got super high engagement.
Tremendous. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's the uptick because we're filling a need that is always consistent pre or post COVID or
And you were
during
structured
COVID.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So then to that point, do you have any advice for, you had mentioned a lot of these accelerators and programs and conferences and you name it, are all moving digital, or they're trying to, right? And they're trying to put their best foot forward. And then I think that based on my conversations, nobody really understands it unless, again, they were doing it from before. It's a
Yeah.
very sharp learning curve. Do you have any advice for folks, some tips and tricks for folks that are looking to move content digitally?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've always been, content has been a huge part of us, what we do from the beginning. And what we've learned, even pre-COVID, but especially I'll give an example here, case study. So when we rolled out Female Founder Support Week, it was an online conference we did for female founders, and we touched on topics that we heard from inside of our community of what mattered to them. So whether it was, how do I hit revenue goals right now through sales? How do I engage and build up my community during this time? What are those tactics? And what we nailed and what we're good at is the traction piece. We give very tangible, practical things where people are like, oh my God, I can actually go do that with my business right now, instead of so high level. Because what I've been seeing with events, again, great intentions, but they're trying to cover so much that it's just like, I don't even know where to go with this.
Yeah.
And it already feels overwhelming. So, and this was a problem before COVID, is that we have these topics that are interesting, but I think what people are really trying to, at least when they get to us, they're like, I need to get into the nitty gritty. Like, how do I actually execute? I don't want to spend time on Google. When people are like, Google's your best friend, it's kind of your frenemy, because you don't even know what you're going to get if it applies. So the first thing is like giving something tangible, because I think when it comes to communities, especially, or even the value you're giving to customers, people want to see some type of results in transformation. And if it's a community level, they want to see results in transformation and do it together. So if you're putting out content, what value is it serving? I think that's the first thing. And is it what people wanted? Because we didn't do that event without getting the feedback from our people to say, this is what I want to hear. Because it's easy for us to think this is cool, but we haven't really surveyed people to say, is this what I actually need? And the second thing that we learned that we're actually implementing more of that we did not nail when we did that online conference was we were so focused on the practical things, we didn't give enough space and time for people to connect. Because what people are hungry for right now from a like content, not even just content perspective, just general perspective, is that they want and crave connection right now because we're isolated. So I think where people can nail it right now is if they figure out a way that they can leverage their content and forge connections for the people they're trying to serve. And that means different things for different companies. But for us, that means if we do events, so we actually, our next event series, we're going to tailor it to be less like come one, come all, but more workshop. So then people have the time to learn something together. And then we still get the content from it because we're hitting on something specific they said they needed. But then also we have enough space and time for them to meet each other because there's not so many people in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. Thank you. What are your projections or forecasts for a post-COVID world as it relates to the ecosystems that you're cultivating and involved in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly just see, or I'm hopeful for, rather. I see people doing kind of YOLOing it, because I think what this has taught us, and hopefully it's taught us, is that just sitting on things that you've been wanting to do, like nothing's promised, right? So it's like, why not do that thing? Why continue to beat yourself up and fight for something where you're not even feeding yourself? And that could even be on a spiritual level. Like we're in New York. And this is, I think, a very like US thing. I mean, overall, but especially in the US, it's go, 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 hustle, grind, do this, da, 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 da. But I think this is like a master reset. It's forcing you to slow down and say what actually matters. And why am I drilling myself into the ground for something? What am I proving? So it's saying, what am I going to actually do that matters to me, that I'm willing to invest my time in? Because then it doesn't become a matter of I'm killing myself for something that doesn't even matter. It's like, no, I wake up every day and, probably a month straight, like the last month, I took a little bit of a slowdown for the last week and a half, but I was working 15-hour days and I didn't even realize it because we had our accelerator still going. We had the online conference, we did all of these things, but I was so pumped to get up every day and do what I did. And so I think from an ecosystem perspective, I find that there's going to be more, I hope there's going to be more innovation that comes out of it, because I think it's giving people the opportunity to become more creative. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm in such a create build mode where I'm just like things that I kept pushing off because I'm like, oh, I don't have the time to sit and strategize. I'm like, no, now's the time. Now's the time because this thing needs to exist. So I'm hoping post-COVID that we're seeing people kind of come out of this and really saying, this thing matters to me. I'm willing to invest. If you're going to do 70, 80 hours, which really in most places it's proven that you're not more effective after 40 hours. But if you're going to do 70, 80 hours, do it on some shit that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And to a point that you had made before, the resource type stuff. So if you're moving towards digital content, provide value, provide tangible takeaways. I think I'm going to take that to heart. And the series that I'm putting together, which, this is currently a part of, it's 25 to 30 different brand leaders, entrepreneurs, investors. And I'm gonna maybe write an outline, maybe a digital download where it'll have takeaways and resources from folks, things that you have mentioned amongst the other folks in it, and deliver that. I think that's a really, really great takeaway that I'm absorbing from you. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Alex Batdorf of Get Shit Done Accelerator. Sorry, do you call it Get Shit Done Accelerator or no?
Just get shit done. I mean, we have the accelerators get shit done accelerated, but the
Okay.
companies get shit done.
So let me just say that again. Alex Batdorf of Get Shit Done, thank you so much for participating, and I cannot wait to see you at Prospect Park or somewhere around the world soon. I mean,
I know, Brooklyn kickbacks. I miss it. I'm literally going to be out of the house. I'm never going to be in the house ever again.
today's a beautiful day, so hopefully maybe a run or something like that.
Exactly.
Who knows? But soon enough, for sure. Thank you
Exactly.
so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.